There were 5 police cars lined up outside the house, their flashing lights casting restless reflections across the street. Something serious had happened, that much was obvious. The moment I woke up in my hotel room that morning, thousands of miles away on a business trip in Europe, my phone buzzed violently. A string of messages from my younger sister lit up the screen, punctuated with frantic exclamation marks that almost vibrated with her panic. The irony was that I was the one who had set those wheels in motion. It was my call, made in a cold, glass-sharp anger, that brought the police to my home. But that morning's chaos had started long before her messages, about a week earlier, to be exact. My name is Kristen. I'm 35 years old, and I work as a senior consultant for an international firm. Half of every month is spent on planes, in airports, and inside sterile conference rooms in cities I hardly have time to know. My days are filled with back-to-back negotiations and complex restructuring projects that determine the futures of entire companies. It's a life built on discipline, ambition, and sacrifice, especially of my own rest and personal time. The one visible proof of all that effort sits in a quiet suburb, the house I bought a few years ago. It's modern but warm, with tall ceilings, wide sunlit windows, and interiors I personally designed to reflect calmness and strength. Every piece of art, every carefully chosen material is part of a sanctuary I built with my own hands and my own money. After weeks drifting from one hotel to the next, this house was my one place of refuge, the space where I could simply be myself. No deadlines, no clients, no compromises. I have a sister 3 years younger than me. We were never close. From childhood, we moved through life like oil and water. She spoke her mind without hesitation, while I held my emotions tightly under control. Her impulsiveness always clashed with my sense of order. And when she married her longtime boyfriend, bringing his family into the picture, that distance widened. We reduced our interactions to polite small talk at obligatory family gatherings, Christmas dinners, Thanksgiving lunches, careful to avoid any topic that could ignite an argument. It wasn't affection, but it was peace of a sort. That uneasy peace lasted until the day everything cracked. I had just wrapped up an exhausting week in Europe's banking sector, hammering out the final details of a restructuring deal. When the client finally signed off, relief washed over me. I wanted nothing more than to be home, so much so that I changed my flight and returned 2 days early. By early afternoon, my taxi rolled up to my driveway. The familiar sight of my home, a neat path edged with seasonal flowers, the stylish front door I had chosen myself, felt like a reward after weeks of airports and boardrooms. All I could think of was collapsing onto my favorite sofa, catching up on the shows I'd missed, and breathing in the scent of my own space. Key in hand, I pushed it into the lock with a quiet, almost reverent anticipation. But the moment the door opened, that sense of calm shattered like glass. There were people inside my house. Not one or two, more than that. The air felt wrong. A strange smell. Half of it the sour edge of someone else's daily life. Half of it construction dust, drifted toward me. From the barely open door to the living room came the rough voices of men I didn't know. The high-pitched screech of drills cutting into walls mixed with the dull thuds of hammers. My first thought was burglary, but the scene didn't fit. Work boots and sneakers were scattered across the polished tiles of the entryway like debris. Among them, my eyes locked on a pair of neon designer sneakers, the exact ones my sister had shown off on social media just a few days before. My heart went cold, heavy, sinking with an almost physical weight. Moving as silently as I could, I slipped off my heels, my steps muffled by the hallway carpet. Every nerve in my body sharpened as I crept closer, my hand hovering near the wall for balance, bracing myself for whatever I was about to see. My hand lingered on the cool metal of the living room doorknob. With a breath drawn tight in my chest, I twisted and shoved it open. "What do you think you're doing here?" My voice sounded deeper, steadier than I had expected, a calm that was dangerous. What greeted me was my home, and yet it wasn't. At the far end of the living room, the open kitchen I had handpicked after traveling through Italy lay in ruins. The tile backsplash, once a point of pride, had been ripped down, leaving dangling pipes exposed like raw nerves. The master bath and toilets, too, were gutted. Workers swung hammers with thoughtless rhythm, as though dismantling a condemned building, not someone's sanctuary. Bits of concrete and torn wallpaper carpeted the floor. Grease-stained tools and dust littered my custom kitchen counters I had designed to perfection. And reigning over the destruction, arms folded with smug authority, was my sister. Her husband stood beside her, a faint smile plastered on his face, passive and useless. Across the room, his parents were sunk into my cherished sofa, sipping tea as though they were hosting a casual Sunday visit. The sound of my arrival froze everything. A drill stuttered to silence. A heavy stillness blanketed the room, every eye darting toward me. Then, my sister's sing-song voice broke it. "Oh, Kristen, you're back earlier than we thought. What a surprise. Isn't it amazing? While you were away, we decided to redo all the bathrooms and kitchen for you. Since we'll be moving in, the old fixtures just weren't practical. You always had good taste, but for family life, things should be a little more functional, don't you agree?" Her words tumbled through the air, ordinary in form but incomprehensible in meaning. Move in. Renovation. I knew every syllable, yet strung together they made no sense. For a moment, I wondered if fatigue from the long flight was clouding my mind. I stood motionless, staring at the wreckage of my home, pipes protruding like broken bones, plaster fragments underfoot, and my relatives acting like landlords rather than intruders. The fury in me wasn't wild or chaotic. It rose slowly, clean and sharp, like an icicle forming from the core of the earth itself. "Kristen, don't just stand there. Come sit, rest a little. You must be exhausted after traveling." The words came from the sofa, spoken by her father-in-law with the calm, possessive tone of someone who believed he had rightful authority here. That single invitation snapped me back. In an instant, everything aligned. I remembered unlocking the door myself. There were no broken locks, no marks of intrusion. Which meant, how had they entered? I had never once given anyone an emergency key. I straightened and fixed my eyes on my sister. "Before anything else, tell me this, how did you get inside?" I never gave out a spare key, and the lock wasn't forced. For a split second, her expression flickered. Then she smiled, smug and unrepentant. "Oh, that. At Christmas, remember? When we visited, I borrowed your key case for just a moment. I made a copy. Since you're away so often, it only made sense. Family should have a spare key, right? Honestly, did I really need to ask first?" Her casual confession rang inside me like a cold bell. This wasn't impulsive. It was premeditated, planned with precision, carried out while I was far from home. My anger shifted from molten heat to icy resolve. I turned toward the workers, who were frozen mid-task, unease flickering across their faces. They were not the enemy here, merely caught in the middle. My voice cut through the silence, steady, stripped of all warmth. "Excuse me, who exactly hired you to do this work?" The foreman, helmet askew, shifted awkwardly before pointing to my sister. "This lady. She told us her sister, the homeowner, was away on business trips, so she had the authority to arrange renovations on her behalf." I drew in a slow, steady breath and then spoke with cutting precision. "I see. Thank you for clarifying. But let me make something absolutely clear. This house belongs to me, Kristen. I have never authorized any renovations. Whatever documents you were given, I am now instructing you as the legal owner to stop work immediately and leave the property. This is a formal order. You'll still receive payment for today and compensation for the disruption later." My voice was so firm there was no room for dispute. The workers hesitated, looked at one another, and one by one shut off their tools. My sister shrieked from the corner, "What are you saying, Kristen?" I told them it was fine, so it's fine. I didn't even turn to acknowledge her anymore. My attention was on the four of them. My sister, her husband, and his parents crowded together in my living room. "And as for you," I said coldly, "this is my house, not yours. Why are you here? Why are you tearing apart my home without my permission? Someone give me an answer that makes sense. Why are you so upset? We're family. Show some understanding," one of them replied, the father-in-law, his tone sanctimonious. He said family as if it were a key that unlocked every door, as if it automatically entitled him to my space, my money, my patience. He wasn't my father. He wasn't even a relative by blood. He was a stranger I'd met only a few times at holiday dinners, a man who now dared to wield the word family like a weapon. If my real father had spoken, maybe I would have felt sorrow or disappointment. But from this man, all I felt was rejection and a kind of icy fury. I locked eyes with him and spoke in a voice that was low, calm, and sharp as a blade. Family, please, let's not pretend. With all due respect, you're nothing but a stranger to me. And yet you're in my house lecturing me? I find that incomprehensible. His face flushed a furious red, his lips trembling. My son's family is struggling, he said. They can't pay rent. You're always traveling for work, and this house is so big, so empty. I arranged for them to move in. The plumbing was old, so we started renovations out of kindness. Isn't that what family does? Help one another? You should be grateful, not angry. Grateful. The word slammed into me like an insult. That was the final straw. Grateful. I hissed. You copied a key. You broke into my home. You destroyed my property. And now you want gratitude. My voice was steady but ice cold. Whatever you think is normal, it isn't mine. This isn't kindness. It's trespassing. It's vandalism. You have 1 minute to get out before I call the police. I pulled my phone from my handbag and showed them the emergency screen. 911 already dialed. That small gesture wiped the arrogance off their faces instantly. The bravado crumbled, replaced by muttered insults. Ingrate. So cold, they spat. My sister's husband looked pale and lost, and my sister glared at me with eyes full of rage and despair. Without another word, they gathered their things and left. I turned back to the stunned workers, apologizing formally as I terminated their contract. The foreman, red-faced with embarrassment, accepted the cash I handed over for their day's wages and inconvenience. I promised to cover the official penalties later and ushered them out too. Finally, I was alone. The house was silent again, but the stillness was heavy. It no longer felt like my sanctuary. The walls were torn open, rubble scattered across the floors, and the sour presence of the intruders still clung to the air. That same day, I called a locksmith. Every lock would be replaced with state-of-the-art digital systems, no more duplicated keys, no more weak points. Then I contacted the largest security company in the country and signed up for every measure they offered. AI-equipped surveillance cameras covering every angle, intrusion sensors on every window and door, and a 24/7 monitored alarm directly linked to the police. I also hired a separate, trusted contractor to repair the plumbing damage. The costs were steep, but I told myself it was an investment in my peace of mind and the protection of my home. That night I sat on the living room floor, hugging my knees, surrounded by rubble. Memories drifted up from my childhood. My sister's endless desire for whatever was mine. My favorite doll, my prettiest dress, even my first real friend. And always, my parents said the same thing. You're the older sister. Lend it to her. You're the older sister. Be patient. Put up with it. Time. And again, I'd swallowed my discomfort, my resentment, my sense of having my boundaries trampled. This day was just a larger echo of that same pattern. With our parents gone, my father soft to her tears, my mother urging me to yield for peace. There was no longer anyone holding the imbalance in check. My sister's demands had grown without limit. And now, at last, I had no reason left to tolerate injustice. No reason left to keep quiet. This time, I had drawn a line. I had no parents left to turn to, no safety net. Everything I had fought for alone. This house was mine, my refuge, my anchor, and I knew exactly which battles I could negotiate and which I would never surrender. This house was non-negotiable. A few days later, just as I'd foreseen, they tried again. It wasn't another direct assault on the property this time, but something subtler, more poisonous. An attempt to ruin my reputation. The calls began trickling in from distant relatives, full of manufactured sympathy. Kristen, I heard your sister's family is struggling. They've lost their home. Your house is empty, isn't it? Couldn't you let them stay for a while? After all, they're family. It was obvious they had spun a convenient story, painting themselves as helpless victims and me as the cold-hearted sister who refused to help. Then came the silent calls, ringing at all hours. On social media, my sister's account started posting sharp, mocking messages aimed at me, barbs dressed as jokes. Every time I saw one, I forced myself to detach emotionally. I took screenshots, logged the time, date, and link, and stored everything neatly in a folder marked evidence. I muted their accounts, cut off their ability to intrude on my peace, but I didn't block them completely. Part of me was waiting, anticipating that one day they might send something that would reveal their intentions beyond doubt. Their storm of calls and messages never let up, but I refused to answer a single one. The moment they destroyed my home, any chance of honest dialogue had ended. I finished reinforcing my physical security and built mental walls just as strong. In the strange stillness that followed, weeks passed. The quiet didn't feel like peace. It felt like the lull before a storm. I knew they hadn't stopped. They were simply waiting for me to relax. When I prepared for another overseas work trip, I was meticulous. I tested the security system multiple times. Every camera angle streamed perfectly to my phone app with no blind spots. Motion sensors were dialed up to their highest sensitivity. Only after everything was confirmed did I leave, a thread of unease trailing me across the ocean. 1 week later, in the dead of night, fate moved. I had just finished checking materials for a critical presentation in my hotel room in a major European city and was finally lying down when my phone erupted, a violent vibration paired with a piercing alarm tone. A high-priority alert flashed across the screen. Unauthorized access detected at garage door. Motion triggered in backyard. Ice water flooded my chest. My hand shook as I switched the app to live feed. The grainy infrared image glowed like a nightmare. My sister and her husband, dressed head to toe in dark clothes, moving like burglars across my backyard. My sister was struggling with a crowbar at a window while her husband tugged at the garage door. The camera's sensitive microphone caught every hissed word. She changed the locks. This one won't budge. She put in heavy-duty locks. Damn it. Then smash the glass. Do it quietly. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. This was premeditated crime. A crowbar in hand meant more than simple trespassing. It meant intent. When they shifted toward the large living room window and my sister raised the crowbar, I pressed another icon in the app, the deep red button that armed the siren. Instantly, an ear-splitting alarm howled from the house, floodlights igniting all at once and turning the night as bright as midday. On the screen, the two of them froze, then scattered like insects when a rock is overturned, every second recorded as irrefutable evidence. I steadied my breathing and dialed the local police station from overseas. Despite the international call, I managed to relay everything clearly, sending them the footage to the address they gave me. Their response was swift, faster than I had imagined. By dawn in London, a message from my sister appeared on my phone. There are 5 police cars in front of the house. What happened? She wrote, frantic. I replied with deliberate calm, every word sharpened to a point. Oh, you didn't know? Burglars tried to break into my house last night. I reported it to the police. Frightening times, aren't they? I knew from the start she was no innocent neighbor sending me a casual warning. Her words about locks were just a clumsy attempt to cover her tracks. Nothing more than the denial of someone who had been caught red-handed. She was one of the intruders, and the reality of their arrest was undeniable. The moment I heard, I dropped everything, booked a ticket, and flew back home. By the time I stepped off the plane, news had already reached me. My sister and her husband had been taken into custody, charged with unlawful entry, attempted destruction of property, and trespassing. The call came from Mr. Peterson, the corporate lawyer I had hired before leaving. He hadn't taken the case for money, but out of personal interest, and I trusted his judgment. Exhausted from the flight, I still went straight from the airport to his office. His firm was located in the heart of downtown, polished and imposing. Inside the conference room, he projected the video footage onto a massive screen and studied it like a surgeon preparing for an operation. This is airtight, he said calmly. The fact they brought tools like a crowbar, combined with the planning involved, pushes this far beyond a family dispute. It is a deliberate, aggravated burglary attempt carried out by more than one perpetrator. They don't have much ground to stand on. Then he fixed his gaze on me. Kristen, I need to ask you directly, what is it you want? Do you want them imprisoned, or do you want them erased from your life entirely? My response was immediate. The latter. All I want is peace. I don't care if they're punished by the law. I just want them gone. That became the foundation for our strategy. Together, we prepared a meticulous settlement plan. And just as Mr. Peterson predicted, within days their lawyer reached out to us, desperate to negotiate. They had realized the truth. If the case went forward and they ended up with criminal records, both my brother-in-law and his father would lose their careers, their reputations, their stability, their futures. Everything would collapse. No amount of threats, no crying or begging would change that. Negotiation was the only way left for them. Peterson, with his cool detachment, relayed some of their demands during the talks. Each one was more absurd than the last. They argued that it was my fault for failing in my duty as an older sister to support them. They even had the audacity to claim I owed them thousands for renovation expenses. Hearing these reports, I wasn't even angry anymore. Instead, I felt shaken at the bottomless pit of human shamelessness, at how easily people could twist reality to excuse themselves. One by one, Peterson dismantled their arguments with steady, surgical precision. We hold the decisive evidence, he reminded me. If they push too far, we end negotiations and head to court. Once that footage becomes public, they'll lose any last shred of sympathy. After weeks of back and forth, the other side finally caved. Every outrageous demand was withdrawn. They agreed to our terms without exception. And I insisted on only one condition: no more money, no half measures. From that day forward, they were forbidden from making any contact with me whatsoever. Not in person, not by phone, not by email, not through friends, colleagues, or social media. Nothing. The condition would be written as a binding legal pledge, enforceable like a restraining order, with severe penalties for even a single violation. With no alternatives left, they were forced to sign. On the day of the settlement, I sat beside Peterson in his firm's solemn conference room. We received word from the adjoining chamber. All four of them, including my sister's in-laws, had completed their signatures. Moments later, I glimpsed them through the hallway's glass panels, walking out with their heads lowered. My sister turned once to look at me. In her eyes burned a mixture of rage and something softer, perhaps grief. But I felt nothing. My heart was still and quiet, like water at the bottom of a deep lake. Whatever bond had once existed between us as sisters had dissolved entirely. Peterson slid the signed documents across the table toward me. Congratulations, Kristen. Your freedom is secured, in law as well as in practice. With that, I went directly to the police station and formally withdrew my complaint. When the officer asked, "Are you sure?" I answered without hesitation. My decision was final. 6 months have passed since then. My life has become tranquil in ways I never imagined. No more blocked calls, no hostile visits, no venom disguised as family obligation. My home has been restored and improved beyond its former state. The wrecked kitchen is now the spacious island kitchen I had always dreamed of. On weekends, I invite friends over, cooking and laughing together in the space that once felt tainted by intrusion. At work, I've flourished too. Perhaps surviving that battle gave me the confidence to reach higher, but I've secured major contracts and advanced further in my career. My days are now filled with brightness and growth. I lost my family, or maybe more truthfully, the illusion of family that never truly existed. In return, I reclaimed my dignity and the reins of my own destiny. I learned that sometimes blood ties are not lifelines, but chains that drag you down. Some might judge me harshly, call me ruthless or selfish, but I do not regret my choice. It was a necessary, just fight to protect not only my home, but the peace of my entire life.